change. Oh, thank you. So it's the Leaders Change Toolkit. We're gonna go over practical habits, some scripts that you could utilize with your own teams, as well as weekly rhythms. Don't say that too fast together, but weekly rhythms that you can begin to integrate. So, for example, if there are behavioral norms that you've been wanting your managers to adopt, if there have been kind of behavioral changes that you've been wanting your staff to really integrate, this is the lunch and learn to be at and to engage in. Because being able to go through the integration process of how do we get from our beautiful values of our organization and how do we get them into the day to day of what we do is what we're going to discuss today. And so this is the fourth of a four series, Lunch and Learn, where it is kind of possible to join in as a series is in the middle, but we're going to land really with a lot of practical tools and frameworks that you can walk away with as well. So in the chat, please put just the city you're streaming in from, as well as the organization that you're representing. And as we begin, what's one thing you're starting, changing, or resetting this season? What is one thing you are starting, changing, or resetting this season? Thank you. Thank you. Finishing my master's degree. Nice. That's a great one. That's a great one. What's one thing you're starting, changing, or resetting this season? So currently we have people from the East Coast as well as the West Coast. Which one is the best coast? We will leave that up for discussion at another date and another time. So with our engagement, we ask that there's a posture of listening, understanding, and being respectful, not interrupting each other, especially on Zoom. Again, disagreement is normal. So you have made frameworks that may fit your current context or not as well. And then everyone is welcome to participate. So please feel free to ask clarifying questions, sharing feedback, and show that you're learning in some form or fashion. If you happen to see this recording as well, you will feel free to be able to email us. We will leave our QR code at the end so that you can book a call with us and really discuss kind of the framework that you're using, your current context within your work environment as well. And so that will give us an opportunity to learn more about you at the same time. And we have Edmond, Oklahoma here, Ministries. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining as well. So a little bit of myself. My name is Elisa Vasquez Colon. I'm the CEO and president of Cultured Enough. And we have the privilege to be able to walk alongside various organizations across the country to be able to ensure that there's missional alignment as well. We believe that every organization should be able to live out their dreamed culture, and how they do that matters at the same time. And so I'll pass it to my colleague, Janelle, who really gets into the nitty-gritty details of your organization and is able to be able to plan out leadership and learning pathways for you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Janelle Readiness. I'm senior consultant at Cultured Enough as well as director of learning strategy. And as Lisa said, I do get into the nitty-gritty of things, and that's just because I care about the direction that the organization wants to go into, not just what I'm coming in. Here's what the research says, you need psychological safety, all this stuff, but really, how do we translate that into the actual mission, work, values that the institution already had before I even came in there, right? Because it's not my job to just go ahead and change everything and uproot everything, but it is my job to help people to align where they already want to go as well. Just a quick disclaimer, legal advice. These are just a bunch of fancy words. Just say that if anything from our session today, you go ahead and try without any, HR or legal support, that you can't sue us. Or if you're not, quite competent yet at moving the whole organization through change at the end of this, you can't sue us there as well. So this is actually the fourth of a series and the closing of a series. And over the last few sessions, we've been really building an understanding of what actually makes change work at an organization or not work. And in that first session, we really focused on how people experience change and why resistance is actually a normal response, not just something to eliminate, but it gives you a lot of feedback, and so you want people to be able to open up in this change process. In session two, we really looked at the roles and responsibilities, understanding how unclear ownership can often create gaps, and then also why large-scale change needs to be reinforced at every single level rather than, for example, director of HR rolling something out new. But what does it look like to have the people managers at all different levels involved there as well to help reinforce and implement what we're trying to accomplish? In our last session last month, we talked about the truth gap and how oftentimes you're presenting the plan for a new program or for a new process or even a small, minute change, and people are nodding their heads along. They're like, yep, that makes totally makes sense in the moment. But then, a couple weeks later, a month later, or even a year later, you're seeing, oh, wait, what happened? Because I thought we agreed on this. I thought we were on the same page. So what does it look like to close that truth gap and create the conditions where you can gather more honest feedback so that people can adapt what you're trying to have them do in a way that actually works for the work on the ground as well. And now we're going to bring all that together because underneath the strategy, the planning and communication, change ultimately comes down to behavior and habits, what people actually do consistently over time. So today is not just about getting people to understand the change, but what does it take for change to actually stick? And one question that I have that I'd like you to ponder for a moment is what is one thing you've asked an individual, maybe a group, maybe it's your entire organization, to adopt or incorporate into their workflow that really feels like you're pulling teeth? So feel free to put that in the chat. We can talk about it, but one example that I have in mind for myself is that they're with logging in hours, something as simple as logging in hours. And what I had done was okay, like no one's doing it, so or it's kind of sporadic of the application and when we rolled out this new process. And what I had done was, okay, let's schedule it kind of like a weekly Friday. Everyone just get together, do some admin time, and we'll do this for a few weeks. Just the 21 days to build the habit kind of deal. And then after I cut it after the 21 days, then we just came back to the same situation. So that was one thing that I have an example there that feels like it was kind of pulling teeth, even though it felt like kind of a simple thing of, if you want to get paid, you put your hours in. And so as we are going through our conversation today, I do want to clarify what I mean and what Elise and I mean when we're talking about types of change that an organization is asking for, or the leaders of an organization is asking for. It doesn't have to be large scale change, like, a new system to collect hours and keep track of hours. It could also be kind of an individual behavior change, right? It's noticing, hey, um, Charles, I've noticed that you kind of interrupted Tamandra over there. So it's that's a small behavior change just to be more aware of the space that you're taking up. Maybe it's a roles and responsibility change. Maybe you have a new hire and you are giving them the lay down of how the work goes, where to go for lunch, all this stuff and that stuff. Or maybe it's someone that's getting promoted, or maybe it's just someone who's been working there for 10 years. There's a new program, and we also want them to acquire those responsibilities. There's also workflow and process norms, team norms. We've been working a lot with team norms there to rebuild this for a lot of our partners recently. And then also some cross-system change, again, that large-scale organizational change. But regardless of the type, the scope, or the scale of change, it often breaks down in the same place with the belief that change is linear. And that's why we want to reframe how we see change to look at it from a circular loop, a feedback loop, if you will. And oftentimes, leaders treat change as, here's the plan. And most of the time, right? Ideally, as leaders, we're like, no, we have this great plan. I saw this problem, this gap that's affecting how we're working, and so I have this great plan to be able to fix that problem. You explain the situation, you explain how things are going to change, and then you expect people to go ahead and execute it. That works sometimes, but not all of the time, especially with large scale change. What actually works, it looks more like a loop where you have your plan. And the reality is, we can't think of every single situation, right? That might contradict what we're trying to accomplish. And so we go ahead and we try it. We check if it worked in the way that it's intended, and then we learn from that. But what happens with what we learn from that is really important to be able to find a way to implement the change in the way that actually functions at the ground level. I do want to zoom in on this change loop I do want to zoom in on this change loop just to be able to ask some more specific questions of when you're going from the plan, explaining the plan to actually letting people try it out. We're asking, what exactly are we asking people to do that is different from the way that they're doing things already? What are we asking people to also to stop doing in order to start doing the new thing? And between trying and checking, we're asking what actually happened when this was tried. What felt different than you expected? And then when we're learning from check to learn, what does this mean? That it didn't work the way that we wanted it to, or that it did work in the way that it wanted to. Does that mean we should reinforce, try again, try a few more times the same way just to see if it has a different expect? We have kind of an experimental mindset with this. Or does that mean we need to slightly adjust the plan or drastically adjust the plan? That's the point of checking and learning. And then we go back from what we learned to what will we do differently the next time or the next week or the next day, because this change is important. It goes and aligns with the direction of the organization, and it will essentially one day help propel our mission forward. But what will we do differently next time? And it goes into this cycle, and it's not to say that we're going through the cycle and it's starting over. It's saying, no, we're just building on what we learned. And again, this makes it so much more simple and easier to be able to build the habits that we want to see, so that the benefits of what we're trying to change can actually come into fruition there as well. I know I'm moving along quickly, so if you have any questions, please feel free and put in the chat. But oftentimes, let me close the loop thought with saying that clarity fades a lot faster than we think. Because alignment is not a moment, it's a maintenance process. And for those that are watching and engaging who are very high performers, Elisa knows me. I ask a lot of follow-up questions because I will not do well with a lack of clarity. But I have built a relationship with Elisa that I can ask those follow-up questions when I feel like something's not clear. But oftentimes, the reality of organizations is we have a lot of people who are just saying, yes, boss, like yeah, absolutely. But again, alignment is not a moment where you share the plan, it's a maintenance process. So I want to ask just something to think about as we are moving along. What have you assumed at your organization something was clear that you asked for someone to do, but you actually never came back to it? So you don't know actually if it was as clear as you thought or if it did what you were intended. What is something that you thought was clear, but you actually never came back to? I know I have a lot of these in my mind, but we don't have time for all those. So I'm gonna keep on moving us along into why doesn't change stick, especially the change projects, the change initiatives, the new things that we do that we know will benefit our team. For example, to increase psychological safety, to increase challenger safety, for example, we want people to be able to push back and say, "Hey, actually, no, I think, what about this idea instead?" Or that's not actually going to apply to me. And so sometimes we have these plans to, for example, increase psychological safety, and we all agree as a team that we could benefit from it. But why doesn't it stick? It's because habits don't form because time passed. I mentioned earlier that 21 days to build a habit is a myth because habits form because something was repeated and reinforced. And without the reinforcements or repetition, time is irrelevant, essentially, right? Because you get on a bike once, you try it once, maybe you learn very quickly. A lot of people don't. But trying something once and doing it once is not gonna be able to build a habit. You're not gonna all of a sudden become someone who bikes to work every single day right after you learn how to ride a bike. So what this looks like, we say it once, we move on because we think it's clear and it's straightforward, but it didn't have the intentions. The outcomes weren't what we intended it to be. We check in on it and say a week later, hey, like how's this going for you? And then like good. And so you assume it's done, hands off. 6 months later, we're back to our old habits again. And then it's never really brought back into the workflow in the way that intended. It kind of just disappeared. And the lingering effects of that are so real. And we see that in the lack of change resilience that a lot of organizations are facing because a lot of people are just cynical of, well, we tried this already, or we tried something like this already. What's the difference this time? And while that thinking may feel very frustrating as leaders who spend 6 months to a year rolling out a new plan, that reaction is so realistic. If we're constantly being asked to try something new, and then it doesn't come into fruition, it does have lasting effects when we are not following up with that feedback loop to check how it's working, to check how it's functioning, and to adjust from the original plan as necessary as well. So, what are we actually asking people to do is going to be a very this is the second element. If the two things that you're taking away is the feedback loop and then also a definition of what outcome clarity actually looks like. When we are rolling out a new change, we often have the goals in the process. What are we trying to achieve? How will it actually happen? But we often forget to name some of the behaviors of what we expect people to do differently. And two helpful questions. And what Elise is going to get into some examples of what this actually looks like in practice. But two quick key questions with this is, was it done? Did it actually work? If the goal, again, is to increase psychological safety, that is the goal that we're trying to achieve. Maybe we can get some indicators. Elise and I can nerd out all about the indicators, all about the data, have this process. And then process, what will the work actually look like? Where will it actually happen? We can start with just the meetings, the weekly meetings that we have, the monthly meetings that we have. And then we can start to build in that iteration. And then the behavior, what do we expect people to do differently? Because building psychological safety isn't just a matter of, hey, we want you to speak up more. Because how many times have we heard that? And actually in the back of our brains, like, I'm good, actually, because last time I spoke up, I was reprimanded. So, what is the actual behavior that we expect people to do differently? That is asking questions before we provide solutions to people. That is allowing people to come to their own kind of solutions. That is normalizing when mistakes are made and say, like, hey, what can we learn from that rather than, oh, don't do that again. These are some of the behaviors that we want to actually establish and say out loud that we want to be able to see. Because when clarity is missing, even with a seemingly clear goal and process, people are aiming at very different targets. The work gets done, but often it's inconsistently, or maybe the work doesn't get done. And then also leaders think it's clear, teams experience confusion because you miss what's happening, You miss the frontline insight because you don't have the feedback loops. And sometimes as leaders, as much as we try not to, we do have these enclosed meeting spaces that we are initiating the change and implementing the change. And then oftentimes we can also reinforce the wrong things as well. Any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. But in the meantime, Elisa, I'm gonna pass it to you to talk about what's next on our agenda.
Thank you. Thank you. And so when clarity is missing, you want to be able to gauge that it is missing and being able to do that as a leader, depending on where you stand within the layer of your organization. Maybe you are the CEO and you have a more of a 30,000 viewpoint of your staff and the climate of the details and where behaviors and norms are not aligning. Maybe you're getting maybe you have the HR view where you're only hearing when the fire has been put out and everything's burning, and now you have to come in and fix everything. Whereas you wanted to be better prepared, you would have preferred more proactive conversations than being able to put out or having to put out fires all day. Or maybe you're sitting here and you're managed 2 to 3 people and you're getting all these directives from your higher up that you have to now disseminate to your direct reports. How do you do that? When do you do that? And how do you have a more integrative approach than a check the box, if you will? I just got off of a call of someone who trains and oversees about 60 people. And so they're going through the list of how do I get my staff we have this incredible platform that we use for learning. How do I get them to that? How do I get them to have a more integrative process than this is another thing added to your plate, or this is a more of a check the box as well. And so we like to use this framework or image to be able to say that change is often driven by one role, but reinforced by many. What do we mean by that? If a manager has eyes on maybe 2 to 3 people, the CEO does not. And so it is really up to that mid-level manager role. In our scenarios, we'll speak to that role of what they could ask, how they do the feedback loops in order to be able to reinforce the behavior they want to see. And so the bottom line is that if managers don't run the loop, then change doesn't stick as well. It doesn't matter how beautiful your vision is for your organization. It doesn't matter the incredible strategic plan that you may have for cultural change or even retention. What really matters is what are your managers doing in the day to day, and how is that aligning with the vision that you desire to see as well. And so most of us, when we do this, it doesn't sit in the middle. We tend to swing between two extremes. So some of the times, if we are running an organization, we'll do an all staff meeting and we'll think that we've hit the line items. And of course, they will be able to kind of input or implement the decision that you're making on an all staff meeting. Or it's being too micromanagey, where a CEO or a high leader is going into the day to day of what staff are doing when that's really the manager's job at the same time. So there is a world where if you feel like one side we are over functioning, where we step in, we solve the problems, carry the change ourselves, and it's a good day for everybody else but you, because you were removed from your other work to come in and do a job that was not yours in the first place. It could be borderline micromanaging, and that's how it could be perceived. But you're seeing it as coming in and save the day. So over functioning is absolutely an extreme that we tend to go to. It's that philosophy of it's quicker, I'll just do it myself. Or it's easier, I'll just do it myself. But then we never create the systems or the integrative process in order for other people to step in as well. Or it's under functioning. So we might look at it where we're helping on the other side, but we introduce the change, we hope it sticks, and then we step back away too quickly as well. And we assume that I was clear. We assume that the instructions were clear as well, but we do not stay close enough in the process to make sure that they reinforce it as well. So either extreme, the change can be either become too dependent on us because we're intervening too quickly or too much, or it fades out completely because we just weren't around to be able to see what the end goal was and that it was integrated in the first place at the same time. So if you feel like you're over functioning, say I'm over functioning in the chat, or if you're under functioning, you can put under functioning as well, and you'll be able to kind of rate where you are at the same time. So this first case study that we'll go over, you may relate to it, you may not relate to it, but it happens often in organizations. So a director of HR rolls out three new meeting norms that they integrated, and these meeting norms are reflective of the values of the organization. And the goal really is to increase contributor safety. It's one of the four stages of psychological safety. The goal was to increase contributor safety. And they introduced these norms on an organizational wide initiative. And where they want to see this show up is in the team meetings specifically. So that shows up in agendas, it shows up in your minutes. As well, when you anchor in the team meetings. And so, some of the behaviors that they wanted to see within that is we want to do three things. We want to ask follow-up questions within these meetings. We want to invite one additional voice before moving on. And we list examples. Oh, we haven't heard from X, Y, and Z, or who haven't we heard from that this impacts or that this policy impacts. And then the third one is acknowledge input explicitly. So we really want to name when someone actually really goes with these norms and actually behaves in these norms as well. So it's real-time reinforcement and positive affirmation as well. So you say, that's helpful. Please say more. Or thanks for pushing back. I really appreciate that perspective. Or good catch. I missed that. So you being able to enforce these behaviors emphasizes that you're modeling what you desire to see as well. So a new HR person rolls this out. And so we can talk through what happens, right? So let's walk through what happened after that clear rollout. So different managers did different things with the same norms as well. So some said it once and moved on. That's the underfunctioning that we mentioned. The loop stops after it was planned and explained. Whereas other managers, they restated it and they modeled it for a few weeks. So there was some momentum for a few weeks, but you start to see clear shifts and early shifts as well. And then a few were able to build it into the routine. Uh, for example, an example is creating a template for your staff meetings. And in that template, it doesn't matter the agenda items, those norms are the ones that are going to anchor the guidelines. So just like we as Coach Ed-Enuf, we name our guidelines before any engagement. That is to ensure psychological safety across the board in any environment that we create. And so it is a routine. It is built into templates as well. And so now you're showing up in that meeting and you're reinforcing those norms without any extra effort at the same time. And so with those three categories, you'll start to see results across the entire organization. Within certain teams, the safety increases over time. Across teams, application may be inconsistent because it's not built into everyone's routine. And then in cross-functional meetings, you have old norms that are popping up that are contrary to the new norms that people are sticking with, and therefore you start to see inconsistency and certain behaviors tolerated that don't align with the values or the mission of the organization as well. And so we want to see change sticks where it's reinforced, where it's routine as well. So you cannot communicate change into existence. So an announcement, a all staff meeting where you're making these beautiful remarks as well. That is not where the change lasts. You can start it there, but you definitely have to build it into the routines and the existing systems that you already have as well. And then clarity is co-created, not delivered at the same time. So if you are leading a team, you need to be able to co-create this process with those who are going to be in the day-to-day so that they can implement the exact behaviors or norms that you desire to see as well. And I'll pass it back to my colleague Jenna for the second case study.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Elisa. And that's the reality, right? Is that when we're trying to build in change, what we're asking people is to embody new habits. But our old habits persist. And I was listening to a podcast yesterday about what does it look like to really help facilitate change at the micro level of behavior. And what they had said was that, especially with managers, the habits that we are enforcing are oftentimes they're not even the most persuasive ones, the ones that are like people are talking over each other, all those things. Like we can see that that's not a healthy habit. But they don't have to be persuasive. They just have to be persistent. And so interruption of old habits are oftentimes what is really necessary to be able to incorporate and implement the new habits there as well. And for the second case study, you might be here like, some things, what if I don't have a clear goal yet? I've identified the problem. I see kind of the direction I want to go. And that's just the reality of the organizations that we work with, right? Because it's the nonprofits, the K through 12 education, the healthcare centers that need to adapt on the go, adapt on the fly, because there's some things that are constantly changing. And so you're like, well, I can't define the outcomes. I can't define the process. I can't define the behavior. You know what? That's okay. And I'm going to show you what that can look like through this case study here as well. So let's say that a new HR director joins an organization and immediately they notice this pattern where there's high turnover in roles within the first 3 months. So people come, stick around for 3 months, and then they dip. According to exit interview notes, they're seeing that new hires are often feeling unclear in expectations and struggled to feel productive early on. That's kind of the feedback that they had shared before they left. The director then sees a need for, what really helped in my last organization was an intentional onboarding process. Because right now I'm observing from the sidelines. I don't know everything about the organizations just yet, but from my observations, people are kind of just getting, it's like what do you call it, the fish out of water, or you're just getting thrown in with the sharks. Even again, without intention, it's just people are busy. People are busy with their own work, and so they don't have time to onboard this new person. So what they do instead of just going ahead and making plans themselves, they begin to ask managers and recent hires on insight that would have helped them or what really helped them maybe from a colleague or a manager who is there, what helped them to really gain their footing and why have they been at this organization for the last 5 to 10 years. One team member offers to serve as peer support. So what that means is just like they're like, okay, well, they can just shadow me. They can just be my shadow their first 2 weeks so that they can see in real time what the work actually looks like rather than just be receiving like a checklist of like, here's all the modules you need to take to understand our mission, our values, like, all the things like the anti-harassment modules that we all receive in the onboarding process. But in addition to that, they actually they pilot this process for the next few new hires that they assign them to a buddy, peer support, so that they can shadow them. And then after each attempt or after every new hire in the next few months, the new HR director actually follows up with that new hire and with their assigned peer support. And they ask, hey, what felt clear or what felt confusing? And actually, what would have helped you sooner so that you could gain your footing? And what they're doing is going along in that cycle where they're planning something, they're trying something, they're checking if it worked in the way that it was intended, and then they took what they learned to roll out the new iteration. So it's not this large scale change all at the same time, but it's really this sense of after a few cycles, they begin to see a more clear plan, a more clear outcome process and set of behaviors that's really gonna evolve what it looks like. Even though you didn't start with clarity, you can gain clarity over time. It doesn't have to be a big overhaul. It can just be iteration after iteration. And so over the next 12 months, the approach evolved from just, hey, here's a week of shadowing a buddy in a similar role to now an onboarding flow with shared expectations, a faster ramp up, and fewer exits in the first 90 days. Because even though they didn't have a clear plan at the beginning, it became clearer along the way because they were not just what based off of the last organization I worked in, this is what could work. It's like, no, let's actually try some new things. Let's engage people who have been here for 5, 10 years so that we can gain clarity along the way as well. And Elisa, I'm going to pass it back to you so that you can close out our time and let them know what they can do next Monday.
So when you come into work either tomorrow or Monday, some things that you can immediately apply is really pick one thing. And I'll give you a minute to think about it. Pick one thing that is a norm, a value of your organization that you wanted to see live out more. Once you have that one behavior, one item in mind, you want to be able to define it. So if your organization has not defined its values and have descriptions, that's where we can partner and come in and help you define those values. But one thing is you do not want to leave values up for interpretation within your organization. So define the behavior that you desire to see within your staff meetings when you're not in the room, and what do you want people to actually do differently? And then you want to run this loop. And so being able to try a norm, check for validity and integration. How can we integrate it as well? Learn what is sticking. So if there's a norm, for example, you saw two case studies where some did stick and some didn't. And so you being able to really look at what could I have communicated better? And also, how could I have integrated this better as well? And then adjust as needed. So as you're constantly looking and managing people or you're managing projects, this is an area that slips through the cracks, to be honest. So when you're evaluating your own culture and the culture that you desire to see within your team, these are ways, and this is the loop and the framework that you could utilize to be introspective about what you could do better and how you could integrate this better as well. And then stay in it. So even if you're a little frustrated with how things have panned out, or you're frustrated by, we keep talking about culture and norms, but things are not sticking. You want to be able to stay the course. You want to be able to check in on integration as much as possible to see what are better ways that I could integrate. What is a system that already exists where I can plug and play? And be able to keep holding people accountable in that way as well. And then that's last but not least, but stay connected through people managers. And so when you do your regular check-ins with your people managers, you want to be able to ask questions such as, what are some behaviors that you are proud that your team is doing? Have you real time congratulated them in those behaviors? You want to celebrate what you want to see as a leader. And then also ask, what are behaviors that kind of you're upset or frustrated by? They don't really align with the service that you want to provide, or they don't align with staff well-being. So those are questions that are not always asked in your check-in with your people managers. So being able to lean more into that work will elevate the conversation that you have and really be able to be direct with what's working and what's not working as well. So this was an example of, professional developments that we do with our partners across the country, depending on their mission, depending on the learning pathway that they are on with their leaders and their staff. And so we want to partner with you. We want to walk alongside with you in this culture journey that you're embarking on, or the journey that you've really been on for some time, and maybe you're seeing some road barriers across the line, and really wanting to be able to fine tune that as well. So feel free to use our calendar to be able to grab some time with us to so we can learn more about you and the barriers that you may be facing within your culture journey as well. And where you will see us next is in our newsletters, where we'll provide tips and tricks on how to be able to engage with your organizational culture and be able to integrate and align with the culture that you desire to see within your organization as well. Janelle, any last items that you have on your end?
Nope, all good. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
rest
you,
of your day.
everyone.